911, what are you reporting?
With someone or something crawling around out here.
Do you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is my sensor light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard. A good-sized man, or something that looks like a man. I don't know what it was, just that it ran across the yard.
Okay. You've had problems in the neighborhood before?
Yeah, my dog was killed here just recently. I don't know what it was, whatever it is, it's running. Couldn't catch it if I was going to chase it. Or whatever it was standing up. I'm out here looking through the window now and I don't see anything. I don't want to go outside. Jesus Christ, you better... Dio!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
You see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh. Okay, hang on.
He's right...
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he in your yard?
He's looking at me.
Oh, the guy is on foot.
I don't know what... It's big. Real big person. That's all I can say.
Okay, it is a person.
Yeah, I think it was a person. Somebody really big.
Witnesses around the world report seeing monsters. Are they real or imaginary? Science searches for answers on Monster Quest. Bigfoot is one of the most widely recognized creatures in the world, yet the scientific community says it does not exist. There are reports all over North America, but the epicenter seems to be Washington State, with over 800 documented sightings.
This thing weighed close to 400 pounds or more.
It had an extremely pointed head.
This thing was huge, 8-9 feet tall.
This noise was like nothing I've heard before.
I found 14.5-inch footprints.
Eyewitnesses describe a human-like ape creature, up to 10 feet tall, broad-shouldered, hairy, and upright walking. But where is the evidence? This Monster Quest search will field 2 different expeditions into the Cascade Mountains of Washington State. One led by wildlife biologist Dr. Briggs Hall, using proven scientific research methods.
Well, we thought of several ways that we might draw this animal in front of the camera.
The second expedition is made up of all women. They have a more unorthodox plan to bring Bigfoot close enough for a photograph.
I think that they respond to women differently than they respond to men.
Monster Quest will also examine existing evidence and what may be the strangest Bigfoot print of all.
The heel is much larger.
And in addition, 2 analyses will look at the most controversial piece of Bigfoot evidence. Critics say the Patterson footage shot in 1967 is fake. First, experts analyzed the footage to see if a man in a suit could possibly reproduce the creature's walk.
Yeah, so if it's real, then it's a funny gait.
Then a first. The Patterson footage has always been blurry, but now, using a digital microscope, we get the best look yet at the creature's face and make a startling discovery. The creature first made national news in 1958, when construction worker Jerry Crew found and cast footprints measuring 17.5 inches long near Bluff Creek, California, located 86 miles from Eureka. Locals nicknamed the creature Bigfoot, and the name stuck. Over the next decade, national interest in the story mostly faded until October 20th, 1967, when Roger Patterson, an amateur filmmaker, set out to Bluff Creek to do a documentary on a recent footprint discovery. But what Patterson found shocked the world. He shot 953 frames of film that many believe is the best evidence of Bigfoot. You will see that film in its entirety for one of the first times on television. Patterson passed away in 1972, never wavering from his story. But he was not alone on that fateful day.
A massive bicep in the arm was, wide like that. And as it moved, you could see the muscles ripping in the thighs. In the arms, even underneath that hair, you could see the difference in the movement.
Bob Gimlin was with Roger Patterson that day, and for almost 40 years was able to stay out of the limelight and controversy. But in 2004, he did this interview recounting that day in 1967.
The weather was great in October, so Roger said, let's ride back up in some of them areas. We rode up that way, up that creek bed away from our camp, which was probably a couple of miles. As we came around, there's a big downfall tree with a root system in the dirt, like a crow's nest, logs jammed together. As we came around that, then of course the horses just blew up, and this thing was standing right alongside the creek on the opposite side of the creek that we were on. It was massive, and the commotion of trying to get the camera out of the saddlebags while his horse was jumping around. I was watching the creature, and it was walking away. Well, the time we got the horses kind of settled down, and Roger ran across the creek, and Roger had the camera to his eye, and then he stumbled kind of and fell down on his knees, and then he got back up, and he ran over to a log that was a little ways away and stabilized himself on the log. And at that time, I rode across the creek on my horse and just sat over there. The creature makes a slight turn with his shoulders and kind of looks back. That's when I rode across the creek on the horse. That's when it made that gesture. So I was looking at it from the back. There were some trees or vegetation that was getting between Roger and the creature, and he wanted to get a better and closer. So he relocated, and when he did, he asked me if I would cover him, which meant get the rifle and see, And there was no intent to shoot this thing at all. Then the creature just kept right on walking.
At the time, it was hard for Gimlin to determine just how large the creature was. But he did find footprints.
And people asked me, well, what do you think it weighed? And I thought, well, it takes a big man to weigh 350. So I said, probably 350 pounds. We weren't here when they got an impression gauge, and of course they estimate after that it was 700 or so pounds, or it was tremendously heavier than I'd thought.
Patterson and Gimlin tracked the creature for miles, but never saw it again. And that's where the trail ended and the controversy began.
So much research has been done on the film by both myself and by scientists and by many other people, and everybody who really gets into that film says there's no way that whatever that is a man in the suit.
Over the years, numerous people have come forward claiming they were the man in the monkey suit. However, no one has ever been able to produce proof.
I'm not impressed by the stories of people who've come forward and said that they're the man in the suit. One particular gentleman doesn't even know how to get to the film site.
The controversy continues, and this episode of Monster Quest adds fuel to the fire by analyzing the footage like never before.
The film is just that. The film subject is an image on celluloid.
Owen Caddy is an expert in digital photography and has acquired the actual 16mm film shot by Roger Patterson.
To my great surprise, there was additional detail that apparently had never been seen before.
Caddy and fellow researcher Richard Knoll will use a high-resolution digital microscope to take a digital photo of each frame from the Patterson footage. If this image is really a man in a monkey suit, seams or fabric could become visible under microscopic examination. If it is a real animal, muscles or other biological identifiers may also appear. Another group of scientists is also looking at the Patterson footage.
Is this gate a human gate? Is it a non-human gate? Is it similar to something that we know or not?
Dr. Jürgen Konczak was an associate director of the Human Sensory Model Lab at the University of Minnesota, when in 2004 he conducted an experiment as simple as taking a walk.
So what you do is, if you're down, you walk like this, and this is exactly what he's doing. This lab is devoted to motor control, to how people, humans, not only walk, but actually are able to move.
One hot topic of internet conversation is the wobbly gait or walk of the Patterson subject. Skeptics say it is a man having difficulty walking in a heavy, bulky monkey suit. But proponents say a human is not physically able to walk like this. The results of this experiment have never been revealed until now.
It seems to be, despite the size, a relatively smooth walk. And it doesn't seem to be like a lot of oscillations in terms of, the center of gravity moving up or down.
Using an optic electronic camera system, Dr. Konczak plans to compare the gait of the figure in the film with that of a human.
Swing your whole arm. Good. Now swing your whole leg. All right, there we go.
Paleoanthropologist Esteban Sarmiento from the American Museum of Natural History in New York is joining Dr. Konczak in the experiment. Sarmiento has studied large wild apes in Africa.
I am totally open-minded as to the question of Bigfoot existing in the Northwest. There has to be something to these reports.
For the test, an athlete with good range and muscle control has been chosen. He will try to match the gait of the creature, while his every movement is recorded frame by frame.
So what we have is these light bulbs that we've attached to some anatomical landmarks. They basically reflect infrared light that is sent out from LEDs next to the cameras. It's been reflected, and then the camera actually picks it up.
The computer then reconstructs the points of light as a three-dimensional figure.
Yeah, we see them all in all cameras, so that's good. His elbow, so this is fine, he has to...
Just bring his elbow.
Kinesiology is the study of human movement and is fundamental in developing treatments for problems in the musculoskeletal system. The question before Dr. Jürgen Konczak and Dr. Esteban Sarmiento is, can a human replicate the gait of the thing in the Patterson film?
Is that okay now? Just let's check his legs and then I'll go up and bend his arms.
Tiny bit? Yeah, try to straighten up your back just a tiny bit.
That's it. What we're going to do with this arm is we're going to just pick up your shoulder just a little bit. Okay? Yeah. Does that look a little bit better?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, lights off.
Recording. Move.
He's like a big plasticine. He's like a big plasticine doll. Right there, he's up. He's got this. See that? Yeah, he's up off the right there. He's totally up. That's, you see, like right there. It's just like as high as he's ever going to come. Right. And now he's going to actually bring his leg through.
The most telling problem is in the subject's knee movement.
Yeah, that has to be back.
There's one sequence of frames in there, I think we're pretty good, and where you clearly see that there is this lateral rotation at the knee, and where the foot is kind of like, going outward, this, which is called inversion. And that is something that it seems rather strange.
The unusual gait of the creature in the Patterson film has received considerable scrutiny. Skeptics say it is a man struggling to walk in a heavy monkey suit. but proponents claim it is impossible for a human to replicate the wobbly walk.
Shoulder markers are roughly around 5 feet, so well, if we'll go a little further, we should be fine.
Dr. Konzak wants to see if this athlete is able to put his body into the seemingly awkward positions of the Patterson subject. If he can, then it is reasonable to assume the walk could be replicated, and it could be a man in a monkey suit. However,
if you look at this gait, I think we can clearly say it is not the walk of a large ape that we know today.
Said he doesn't walk like a human and he doesn't walk like an ape.
the athlete couldn't do it. He could not walk like whatever or whoever was caught on film. Another group of researchers believe they too have evidence of Bigfoot.
I consider the Skookum expedition to be one of the most important expeditions in the Bigfoot Sasquatch phenomenon.
Alan Terry is a member of a group of Bigfoot researchers and wildlife biologists who in 2000 set out to a remote spot in the shadow of Mount St. Helens, Washington called Skookum Meadows to find evidence of the creature.
What led us to the Skookum expedition site was a line of treetops that were snapped off as if in a trail.
Apes are known to break branches to mark territory to ward off other males. Encouraged that they were on the right track, they baited a trap for the beast. They set out apples in a large mud wallow, hoping to lure the creature in and leave footprints as evidence of its visit. It worked.
Some of the bait was taken, and a large impression was left behind in the soft mud. The impression looked like a large humanoid creature with very long flowing hair, and it was considerably heavy as it had left a very deep impression into the mud.
The imprint appears to be the lower half of the animal's body, painstakingly preserved with nearly 200 pounds of plaster. As the animal reached for the apples, the forearm, buttock, and lower leg sunk into the mud, and they found hair detail on all parts of the cast. But the most revealing detail was in a partial heel print. There were dermal ridges, the tiny lines that make unique fingerprints in all primates.
In Bigfoot research, we consider the Skookum cast to be one of the most important finds, probably second only to the Patterson-Gimlin film.
The Skookum cast was found in a valley called Skookum Meadows near Mount St. Helens, Washington, located 150 miles from Seattle in the Cascade Mountains, and 330 miles from where the Patterson footage was shot in Northern California.
I've been Bigfooting for a couple of years now.
Christine Walls is a botanist who is planning a new and unique Bigfoot search here in Skookum Meadows.
I have a theory about Bigfoot, and I think that they respond to women differently than they respond to men. A woman has a more like a gentleness to her. Our voices are higher, more lyrical.
Based on the success of primate researchers Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey, Wall's entire team will be female.
In fact, a man in the forest is probably puts them on guard, makes them a little wary. And I think that a female in the forest piques their interest.
Walls will be joined by Melissa Hovey, Tracy Herigstad, Monica Rawlings, and Kathy Strain.
Women report having more close encounters with this animal. There seems to be the theory that this animal could be attracted to the female scent.
Overly ripe. They smell great.
The team knows they must be much more than lucky. They will incorporate 8 vocalizations and wood knocking, another well-documented primate communication technique.
My goal is to make sure whatever we're doing is scientific. We find any kind of evidence that we're collecting it in a scientific manner so it can be analyzed and not contaminated, such as DNA or hair or, apple bites that might be preserved that shows his teeth. those kinds of things.
Another technique the team will use to draw the creature in on this expedition involves a less conventional approach.
We sing Christmas carols and lullabies, mainly because those are the lyrics that we know. And so, but it actually works out fine because it ends up being songs that are very gentle again.
I'd like to see us split into groups, perhaps early in the evening, do our own thing, maybe walk the roads, talk, sing. And then later in the evening, meet back at camp. Perhaps it would follow us in.
In the event there is any activity at night, the women will be waiting with an array of low-light cameras.
Trying out various camera systems, infrared, thermal, and starlight technology.
And Skookum Meadows is just right. The two hills that come together, I believe it's right at the bottom of the hill to the left.
This spot has a long history with the beast. Paul Kane was a traveling artist, capturing scenes across the northwestern frontier in the 1840s. While in an area that is now Washington State, Kane made a journal entry describing Native American accounts of an ape-like creature they called Skookum. March 26, 1847. We arrived at the mouth of the Catalpoto River, 26 miles from Fort Vancouver. I stopped to make a sketch of the volcano, Mount St. Helens, distant, I suppose, about 30 or 40 miles. This mountain has never been visited by either whites or Indians. The latter assert that it is inhabited by a race of beings of a different species who are cannibals and whom they hold in great dread.
They say that the Skookum is a giant. He is hairy. He eats people. They will not go where he lives.
Skookum means mountain devil, so it's something that's very scary, something you don't want to have an encounter with.
The fearsome behavior of the Skookum does not seem to match modern-day descriptions as a creature that is shy, elusive, and yet curious. Just like the animal Christine Walls claims paid her a visit in 2004.
I hear at the corner of the tent that something is touching the top of the tent.
Christine Walls was camping in the Cascade Mountains when she had her first and only encounter with what she believes was a Bigfoot.
It would scrunch the tarps together, and I could hear it, and it was moving from side to side, and then it would step on it again, and then it would go away. It would go away for maybe several minutes, and then it would come back, and I'd hear the stepping on the tarp again. I'd hear it scrunching the tarp again. It was really having a great time.
Walls never felt threatened. It was more like a curious encounter. She never got a look at the animal, and it left as suddenly as it had arrived. But this time, Christine will be prepared.
I've got all of my tape recording equipment inside the tent, and so hopefully we'll have some activity tonight.
We'll go ahead and set it up and see if we can't align it to make sure that it's pointing in the correct direction and it's at the right height off the ground.
Motion-activated stealth camera traps will be positioned over bait throughout the area.
So we need to make sure we're marking it on the topo where we're putting the cameras and what time we're putting the cameras on. So our data recorder, make sure you record all that information so that we know when we're putting it out. We also need to count the apples, how many apples that we put out. Mm-hmm. And whoever's handling the apples, we've got gloves so we're not contaminating, putting our own scent back on it.
The next morning, they search the area and make a discovery just outside the main tent.
Possible tracks here. Okay. Possible heel, toes. All right. And here. Let's measure them. Let's measure them out. Okay, now do this. Length is approximately 15 and 3/4 inches. Length on this one, about 14.
The prints appear old and weathered, but the outline is clearly visible.
3 since I left my gloves on.
Let's go, girl.
Melissa and Monica cast the footprints for later analysis, hoping they may reveal derm ridges or other details that might reveal the animal that made them.
Footprints, they appear to be large, bipedal, barefoot type prints. We haven't finished analyzing. I haven't seen the cast cleaned quite yet, so we'll have to judge from there what those will look like.
At the very least, they believe they are in the right area. Properly cast impressions can leave revealing detail, but determining what left the hair and bony imprints is another story. Some experts believe the Skookum cast could have been made by a known animal.
Yeah, I'd like to be particularly interested in seeing that of an elk.
Dr. Darius Swindler is a primate anatomist. He wants to do a comparison between an impression he made of the lower leg of an elk and what is believed to be the same anatomy from the Skookum cast. Elk frequent mud wallows to cool off and deter insects, and when lying down, an elk might make an impression similar to that made by a large primate.
But there is some similarity, I must confess. I'd like to be able to dissect this and just see how much of this is the muscle and how much is tendon.
Owen Caddy is joining Swindler to see if there is anything in the cast that might cause the wobbly walk or slumped posture seen in the Patterson footage. They focus on the Skookum leg cast.
Angle here is very different. Slope.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some talk of maybe this is a feature from a slump, but nevertheless,
that's what I was wondering before.
This is concave and this is convex on the elk.
Yeah.
And I don't know that a slump would totally change it from a concave to a convex surface.
Yeah, that's a good point, really. Mm-hmm.
The other section to show a substantial difference is the Achilles tendon.
Again, the shapes are quite different.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is much more vertical.
Yeah, much more vertical, rounded.
The differences between the two specimens would indicate that the Skookum impression was not made by an elk. But what about a primate? According to Swindler, the thick matted hair detail is not human, and the size and shape of the leg does not match any other known primate. Skeptics of Bigfoot say that evidence like the Skookum cast and the Patterson footage would be more believable if it had been discovered and collected by wildlife biologists. But many of these discoveries have been first reported by laymen.
For 100 years, the natives reported big gorillas in the jungle in Rwanda, and yet it wasn't until 1950 that they were found. Certainly this area is as vast as that, so who can rule out the possibility that something like that couldn't exist here? I think it's possible.
Dr. Briggs Hall has spent decades in these forests and mountains as a veterinarian for the state of Washington. Dr. Hall has never seen a Bigfoot himself, but he believes any elusive animal can be found if proven methods are used.
So we're going to go back into the most remote areas, the deepest canyons, the highest ridges. We're going to be at least a mile, set up our cameras at least a mile from any trail.
The search for new evidence is underway. But what about the microscopic images of the Patterson footage? The enhancements are now done, and for the first time ever, new detail will be seen.
This is the area where the horse becomes most lathered. We're hoping to get a lot of horse stink into this cloth, and then we're going to hang it in a tree in front of one of our camera traps.
Dr. Briggs Hall has studied most of the large animal wildlife in Washington state, except Bigfoot.
And I was a little frustrated that the scientific community and the government biologists had not made any attempt at all to follow up on any of these reports.
Hall had heard about Christine Wall's all-female Monster Quest expedition, made up of researchers, not scientists, and decided to investigate on his own.
So what I'd like to do is come across, and if we could get up here and look at the headwaters of this creek up here, looks like it.
And like Walls, he too had an encounter with something he has difficulty explaining.
Last summer I was up in the Goat Rocks wilderness with a group of biologists, and we were capturing mountain goats. I don't sleep well in the sleeping bag, so I was tossing and turning, and about 1 o'clock in the evening, 1 o'clock at night, I heard what sounded like two sticks being knocked together. And in a rhythmic chunk, chunk, chunk. And I'd never heard that in the forest before, and I thought, what could that be? And I didn't have a flashlight. It was a very dark night, but it was coming from out behind the horses. I heard it 3 times between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning. There was no question that I heard wood against wood. And there's elk up there, there's deer up there, there's bear up there, there's mountain goats, there's cougars, but it takes hands to knock sticks together. And so there's something else up there.
At the time, Hall knew little of primate behavior and decided to do a little digging.
When I started reading about mountain gorillas and orangutans, that I found out that that's normal primate behavior.
Hall believes the accounts of wood knocking and loud vocalizations could be apes communicating with one another, possibly to warn of an intruder.
If there really is such a thing as a great ape living in our mountains, he lives in the most remote areas. He's obviously very shy and goes to great difficulty to avoid people.
Hall's strategy is simple. Set up camera traps for an extended period of time and leave the area, a technique used by other wildlife researchers in search of elusive animals like tigers and jaguars.
We'll be setting up camera traps using a stealth cam, and this is a camera which uses both infrared technology as well as detects motion. Okay? Now the idea is when an animal walks in front of the beam, it's going to snap a photo, and the photo is going to be a high-resolution photo with in color. So there should be no problem distinguishing between a bear or an elk or a Bigfoot. If our bait is right here, I don't know, it looks pretty good, don't you think so?
Yeah, I think it's right on.
Okay.
Briggs Hall has chosen a remote area called Goat Rock, bordering the Yakima Indian Reservation, 64 miles from Mount St. Helens. He believes this would be a good place to hide if Bigfoot wanted to avoid humans.
So it's going to be bushwhacking, so watch your step, and I think let's go 20 minutes, and then we'll try to find some identifiable, easily identifiable landmark, because I'm wondering if we can get a GPS location under the trees. This is the general area where I heard the wood knocking last year, and so it seems to me that this is a good spot to put a camera. If Sasquatch really wanted to find a place to go where he could avoid people, this would be the perfect habitat. You know, the areas where I want to put the cameras are quite spread out. So we're going to be hiking for 4 or 5 miles to the south, and then 4 or 5 miles to the north. We're going into some really deep canyons, and we're also going to set a camera clear up in the scree on the very high ridge. So overall, these cameras are spread over probably 10 to 12 square miles. And just upstream from here, there's a major game trail crosses, so I'm thinking that's a great place to create a real stink and set up a camera. And the way the breeze moves up and down this canyon, we might just draw something in.
The batteries will allow the cameras to operate for approximately 30 days, at which time Dr. Hall will return to retrieve them before elk season begins.
Look at the beam. Okay, I'm going to try to get the laser beam to hit right in those trees, okay?
To help ensure chances of success, the team is using bait to help lure the great ape to the camera station.
We're going to add some additional adornments this morning to our camera set. So I've got some CDs here, which we're going to hang in a tree and let the wind move them around, and hopefully that reflection will catch some attention. We're also going to be hanging up some sliced up onions to create some smell. Hey guys, look at this game trail. Man, look at this. This is perfect. Got a perfect set of trees here. Look at that.
There's a lot of wildlife gone through here. Yeah.
Okay, and it's high. The wind's going to blow the scent around. This is perfect, right in the middle of the swamps. Let's do it.
Apes, like many animals, display curiosity, and foreign objects and scents can bring animals in for a closer look.
There's a lot of indications that Bigfoot is very curious, and there have been several situations where he's been attracted to music, so we're going to create some music for him. We're going to hang up some wind chimes.
Dr. Hall has used wind chimes before. The strange, non-threatening sounds bring many animals closer to investigate. He is hoping for the same results with Bigfoot. As Hall and his team reach 6,800 feet near the top of the tree line, they make a discovery.
Here we have another one that's pretty distinct.
Several human-like footprints pushed into the loose dirt.
Must be a strange place for someone to come in their bare feet. It seems awfully wide for a human track, but it's not a huge track like you would expect with Bigfoot, but possibly it could be a young animal.
Dr. Hall has brought along hunting guide Mark Allman, who has 32 years of local animal tracking experience.
It's not a bear track, and it's not a cat track. Here's the print here. It stepped on this stick right here, so it comes out to here. And then we got another one here that's kind of a heel print, but there's no tin shoe marks or, I mean, nothing that a human would be leaving here.
With measurements of 9 inches long and 4 inches wide, it is possible a human could have made them, but they have not seen another man now in 3 days riding. They will deploy cameras in this area as well.
Okay, for our last camera set, we're spraying this tree with wintergreen pure essential oils. This is a very concentrated scent, which we're hoping will stay for a while. We set it up right along the game trail and right close to the creek. So, and we've also hung some CD discs up here to kind of spin around in the wind. So this is our last trap, and we'll see what happens.
The cameras will have almost a month to do their work, at which time Hall will return to collect them and the photos they contain. Christine Wall's team has now been in the field for a total of 5 days.
But we should, because that's definitely where the activity is coming from.
And have found something interesting.
When I saw that, I actually started exploring the area a little more, and this is when I saw this other branch. It's broken in a similar fashion. You can see that none of the other longer branches are disturbed. So that makes me think something purposefully grabbed it and snapped it. And these also have been grabbed, and instead of brushing to the side, they're actually pulled straight down.
Oh, those are very, very fresh.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting bedding site because you can actually see where this grass has been just pushed down and bedded, and there's obvious branches that have been laid down.
There's no way that elk take branches off of trees and move them. I mean, if an elk breaks a tree limb, it's going to be right where the tree is.
Or bear.
There's not these did not come off of this tree. This came from a different location. Something carried it here.
However, there is no hard evidence of what made the nest. But having collected their camera traps, the team finds something has triggered the motion-activated cameras.
It's 4 pictures.
If the stories of the legendary Bigfoot are to be believed, this primate is nearly 8 feet tall and walks upright. And most eyewitnesses say it looks like this creature captured on film in 1967. This man was there when the film was shot. This man believes he made a body cast of a Bigfoot.
Whatever made the impression was indeed very, very heavy.
And this experiment concluded the walk of the subject in the Patterson footage is outside the range of a human. Monster Quest followed 2 expeditions in Washington state as researchers and wildlife biologists made an effort to find evidence of Bigfoot. Dr. Briggs Hall put out baited camera traps in a remote area where humans do not venture.
Time for the payoff. We're finally going to find out if we got pictures.
Mark, it says we've got 48 photos on camera number 4.
Well, you know, after a week of hard hiking and 30 days of the cameras being in place and a long, long day and part of a night on horseback, we're finally going to get a look at what's on these cameras.
Dr. Hall's cameras collected over 90 images during the 30 days they were in commission.
I would expect that we'll get some elk and we'll get some deer and maybe we'll get a bear or 2, maybe a coyote. And if we were incredibly lucky, possibly a Bigfoot. I tried to see if there was anything there that we could justify calling a Bigfoot, but there simply wasn't.
Christine Wall's team was also camped near Mount St. Helens. They too had cameras in hand.
That's interesting. Okay, so it's number 113. Come here and look at this and you tell me what you think.
In the far right corner of the screen, there is a dark object. Is this the appendage of an animal just out of frame? When they examine additional images, they find traffic. The image is likely just the tail end of a truck hauling dark cargo. After viewing all the images from the camera traps, it is clear elk are everywhere, but no sign of a Bigfoot. And what about the footprint they found on day 3? The cast provided no details. It is not known if there ever were dermal ridges, but if there, they have been washed away by the rain. However, they were able to find something of interest.
Don't have a lot of bedding areas or nests that are recorded at all. I mean, I've excavated one, I know of a couple others, and that's it. So this is pretty exciting in the Skookum area to have something like this. It's clearly not elk related. It's no reason for a human to be doing this.
For the past 40 years, the best evidence for Bigfoot has been the footage shot by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin in California.
When I got to see the film finally, yeah, I was really relieved to see that he got that much, because Roger said, I don't know, Bobby said, I'm not even sure that I got any film footage at all, because he said, I fell down, I got relocated, and then I got relocated again, and then I ran out of film.
For the first time, the original 16mm film is being examined on a microscopic level. Researcher Owen Caddy used a digital microscope to take pictures of individual frames of the film. Joining Caddy is Dr. Darius Swindler. They are viewing the comparisons for the first time. They look first at the leg for any detail that might be compared to the Skookum cast.
That one's sort of interesting, but here's where they start to get really pretty interesting.
Unfortunately, it's too grainy.
So Darius, you can see here on this image, it's just the full color image digitally pulled off the film.
But as they focus their attention on the subject's head, they make an amazing discovery.
And as you look at the enhanced one, you can see the level of detail has been pulled out. And
you can individual parts of the face.
Yeah, you can resolve the individual parts of the face, the nostrils, the mouth.
When the original film is blown up to a headshot of the creature, the image becomes just a fuzzy blob. But when the enhanced digital image is blown up to the same size, the new details emerge.
You could see the eyelids move up and down. That's muscle there around there, the circular muscle called the orbicularis oris. But particularly well developed was the masseter, this big muscle over here that moves the jaw.
And this is the most interesting sequence of the mouth opening and closing. What's interesting in that it shows the movement of the mouth and the sides of the face and the lips. So there's quite a bit resolved, and there's actually a lot of detail that is consistent from frame to frame, and you get a consistent facial morphology looking at multiple frames. People have often thought of the film subject's mouth as being higher up than it actually is.
And you see how that can happen too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, here's a picture of Pan, a chimpanzee. And you think that the mouth is actually where this dark line is, but it's actually below that in the deep shadow. There's a similar analogy here. Yeah.
That's good comparison. If it had been a mask on some animal, a human or something like that, it was a well fabricated mask, I'll say that, which I sort of doubt now, more than I would have back in those days.
I don't see anything that stands out and glaring what he says fake, you know. The way the mouth can move and even makes facial expressions that are similar to those of chimpanzees, like the compressed lip display. I don't know who would think of that.
Bob Gimlin, who is the only living eyewitness from that day in 1967, is certain of what he saw.
I was watching the creature and it was walking away, but I could see the face real good and I could see the eyes.
The digital view of the original Patterson footage did not reveal any telltale seams, zippers, or other evidence that would point to a man in a monkey suit, but rather seemed only to reinforce the eyewitness testimony.
Somebody once told me, you never use a bigger hammer than you need for the job, and I imagine if they're going to film with 16 millimeter, they're not going to be concerned with details that fine. I don't think anyone would have anticipated the ability to come back 40 years later and do photo enhancements to show details this great.
I really regretted that I was there and saw it because of the ridicule and because of my wife being upset at me and practically thinking about divorcing me because of the thing, and the people saying they faked this and faked that, and it bothers a person. There's no way it can keep from bothering you if you've got a conscience.
The new detail in the Patterson footage is intriguing but inconclusive. Until a body is found or creature captured, many in the scientific community will remain skeptical. But on this day, more than 40 years after this film was shot, the Patterson footage remains the best evidence for those who believe Bigfoot is a real animal.